Okay, so there is not a lot of probability on the SAT. When it does come up, it's usually this more simple stuff where it's like just kind of one or two things going on at once. If you've done probability in school and you've done things like permutations and combinations, that's not as likely to come up on the SAT. So we don't need to worry about that. But here we can just think about probability as a fraction, and that's kind of how the answers are presented. Sometimes probability will be given to us as a decimal, but remember, a decimal is just a fraction that we've done the division for in our calculator and simplified. So it's all the same. So let's just start with a fraction. And the key is we want to get the bottom number first. That is like the number of possibilities, the number that we're choosing out of. So let's just read the story and see how many possible outcomes are there. That's what's going to be on the bottom. In fact, let's just write outcomes, all outcomes. So we'll get some numbers in a second. In a bag, there are 7 red, 4 white, 33 blue, and 33 yellow cubes. If one of these cubes is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a cube that is neither blue nor yellow? So the first bit of that question is basically telling us there's no limitations. We're just choosing a cube. So all we need to know is how many cubes are in this bag. So we just add them up, right? 7, 4, 3, 33, and 33. So I'm just going to get my calculator. I'm just going to add all those things up. 7, 4, 33, 33. That's a total of 77 potential outcomes. Okay, so that's all outcomes with all the different cubes that are in the bag. Now though, for the top, we want kind of like what we care about. So we'll call that the wanted outcomes, right? What are the ones we want? Now this is tricky in this case because of the way they're kind of phrasing it, right? They're saying, what is the probability of selecting a cube that is neither blue nor yellow? So the top is what we want, but the question is phrased as like what we don't want. So we have to do a little switcheroo here. We have to think, okay, if we don't want it to be blue or yellow, what can it be, right? So if it's not blue, it's not yellow, that means it's got to either be red or white. So in this case, I'm going to add those two up, and that's 7 plus 4, which is 11. So there's another way to do this where instead we think about the number of possibilities of blue and yellow and we get that percent or that fraction, and then we subtract. And we would always subtract from 1. That's the key with probability, is the maximum probability of anything is 1. Because we could have, like if we just said, what's the probability of picking out a cube from this bag? Well, that's 77 out of 77, right? They're all cubes. So if we just pick one up, no matter the color, it's a cube. So that's a probability of 1. Because 77 divided by 77 is 1. So we could get the amount of blues and yellows and then subtract that from 1, but I don't think that makes it any easier here. I think that adds a step. So instead, we're just looking at 11 over 77. That's what we want. That's the red and white over all the cubes. So now we just need to reduce this fraction, and 11 out of 77 is 1/7. Just divide 77 by 11, and there you go. So I think probability scares people, but most of the time, like I said, it is just more about reading carefully than it is about actually doing any math. If we did need to reduce this, we would use just the fractions function in the calculator by just doing division. But yeah, it's usually just about reducing fractions. Sometimes, like I said, if we do need to do this kind of like get the blues and yellows and subtract from 1, there might be situations where things are worded in a way where it's actually easier to kind of do that negative. But that's not what's going on here. I don't want to get too into it, but just that's about as complicated as it gets. It's just kind of, if you need to be clever, just try to make whatever fraction is the easiest to understand. And then you can work with that fraction in some way to get the actual percentage or probability that you want for the question.